Lewis with Share It with Charlotte, where emphasis is placed on finding balance in relationships. I am the creator and host, and I just want to say thank you for tuning in to a new episode. This particular one is actually from you to me, which is a letter sharing. And it happened to be for one that my cousin was inspired to write after listening to one of the episodes, is when you lose yourself trying to save everyone else. And so he was inspired to write a story. He's never done this, so this took a lot of bravery and transparency for him to do this. He's actually at the age of 58 years old. And we're going to dive into this letter, but his letter has so much substance, and it was such a heartfelt letter. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, there's so much good stuff that I could share and talk about and expound on. So as you listened, you would literally see, where there's the grief and then there's the guilt, and God's grace is all over his story and where his world shifted. So let me go ahead and get started on this particular letter. And thank you again, Lyonel, for sharing your story. And truly, I believe it's going to be a blessing to someone out there who really need to hear your story. And just remember, and I always say, God's story, the story that God gives you is never just your own. It's always to be shared because someone else could be blessed by something you've already experienced. So here we go with this letter. And I'm going to try to keep my composure because it kind of grabbed me in some areas. So we're going to go ahead and get started now. It says, Charlotte, as you know, our cousin Charlie was struck and killed by a speeding car while many of us, first cousin, were waiting on the school bus. What you do not know is what a devastating effect seeing this happen did to me. In order to help me see it from my perspective, I must start by explaining how close of a connection Charlie and I had. We were only a year apart in age. He was 8 and I was 9. In fact, I do not remember not knowing him. We spent every waking moment together. Our houses were just right across the street from each other. Every day I was at his house or he was at mine. Often we would even spend the night at each other's house. Not only were we that close, but can you imagine seeing this accident happen to your person? Any child would probably be traumatized at merely seeing such a horrific accident. Not only did I see the car hit him, I heard the car hit him. I knew within myself that he was dead. In a state of shock, I got on that school bus. I do not remember the trip to the school, but I do remember them coming to get me out of class to give me the news. I was not just traumatized from seeing that accident, but traumatized of how close we were. The only way to explain it is to say I felt as though a part of who I was as a person also died that day. I did not know or understand who I was without Charlie. Before that day, I was an extremely extroverted kid. One might even say cocky. Charlie and I were both popular at school. We were athletic, we could fight, and had no trouble getting the girls we liked. But that day, things changed. I became a very introverted kid. I did not talk much or socialize with others. When I did talk, these conversations were inner conversations that I had with myself or myself with God. I was going through. Yet no one seemed to know what to say or what to do for a 9-year-old boy that just saw his best friend, his cousin, and his other half being killed by a speeding car. Neither the other kid nor the adults knew what to say or do. Not mom and dad, nor aunties, uncles, or cousins. No, not anyone. Since no one knew what to say, everyone chose to say nothing. But God. Although my family may not have known what to do, my family had prepared me for the struggle. For our family is a very spiritual and God-fearing people. I often kid and tell people I was a drug baby. I was drugged to Bible study, drugged to prayer meeting, drugged to choir practice, Sunday school, and church service. Going to church was just a way of life for any child of the Trailer family. Due to this family tradition, I found Christ at an early age. In fact, that summer, Charlie and I and many of our other cousins had gotten baptized. And then it says, I know without a doubt it is because of my strict spiritual upbringing that enabled me to establish this early relationship with God. For that, I am eternally grateful to my mom, dad, and the entire Trailer family. For I am fully persuaded that without God, I would have stayed lost in my mind. That I would have lost my mind. In fact, even with God for a time, I did lose myself. The next 2, maybe 3 years of my life, I spent internalizing my emotions and mental well-being. People began to see me as a quiet and shy kid. I did not, however, realize that I was being quiet because I was always having conversations in my head with either myself or with God. After these 2 or 3 years had passed, with the help, God and I began to figure out who I was without Charlie. Although the person I was with Charlie was not the person I was without him. I, however, did at least now know how to be this new person that I've become. I began to talk more, made friends, and became more sociable. I must admit that I was no longer as cocky or confident as I was when Charlie was alive. When Charlie was alive, we thought we ruled the world. This new person I was had a few girlfriends here and there while in school, but there was still something wrong with me. Unlike most of my friends, I did not fall for any of them. Later in life, I began to believe that I was afraid to love. In my mind, love meant pain. For I learned at 9 years of age that love could be ripped away from you. After high school, I made my mind up that I had to live for both of us. I joined the Navy with intent to live in a life that would make his mom, who's my aunt, who most of us affectionately called Aunt Scoopy. I want to make her proud. I knew she would see me and think that if what Lyonel was doing, Charlie would also probably be doing that. Then let's fast forward to 30 years. I am now out of the Navy and pastoring my second church. Up until this point, I had never talked about that day with anyone. One day I went to Aunt Scoopy's house, and for the first time, she and I talked about that day. I believe it was a healing moment for the both of us. She said she hadn't talked to me about it because she did not know if I could take it, and she told me that I had not talked to her. I told her that I had not talked to her for that same reason. I told her that I had lived my life in hope of making her proud, for I was living and still am living for the both of us. 2 or 3 years later, I am driving in my car, and I asked God why he took Charlie away from me. Why not the both of us? All these years, I felt it should have been both of us. But if not both of us, it should have at least been me. We never did anything without it being the both of us. He was running across the street to get his older brother. I was faster than him. So if I had gone with him, I would have been ahead of him. I didn't know why I did not go with him that day. But after talking to God, 33 years after his death, this was the first time I understood. God told me that if that day did not happen, in my life, I would not be the man of God I am today. Do I wish that it was both of us to have died that day or just me? Most days I do. Yet I trust in God, my Savior, the one who has never failed me. I am certainly aware that what happened that day strengthened my relationship with God, because I never would have made it without God. Also, that day I was driving in my car. God permitted me to see Charlie as a grown man. Not only did I get to see him, but we talked and we laughed and we joked as though no time had passed. I know many do not believe in this type of thing. Whether someone believes it or not, that is one of many things I am grateful to God for. In conclusion, we never know how God is working in our lives. We don't even realize that even as children, God can be ordering our steps so that we may become who the Maker has created us to be. I'm a firm believer in Romans 8:28, which declares that we know that all things work together for good, for those who love the Lord, and for them who are called according to his purpose. There's a lot in that. There's a lot in this story. But let me share with you initially what came to mind when I read this story. Really two things. One being, what he said was Charlie, along with Charlie himself and some other cousins, people got baptized. And keep in mind, these are young kids, 8, 9 years old. Which tells me Charlie knew the Lord and he was saved. So, Lana, you're going to see Charlie. Because Charlie has a place already. He's already where he's supposed to be. But what I loved also was the family of pouring God into these young kids at an early age, because that's how we grew up. He's my cousin. Actually, my mother's brother is his father. It's Lama's father. But we was poured so much. We all were drugged to church on all levels. If the church door was open, we were there. So we knew God early. We knew who he was. We knew who he was about. And that's your preparation of dealing with trauma and tragic that we know today kids does not get like they should. We're too busy as parents and grandparents and relatives or people just being of the world and in the world, that we don't build the foundation that these kids need in order to deal with trauma, the ugliness of this world, the hand that they're dealt. And like Lyonel said, it wasn't the people that saved him. It wasn't his mom, his dad, his aunts, his cousins. It wasn't them that saved him. It was God. My people thought he was quiet, but he was having many conversations with God. God was just pouring more of him into him. And of course, I'm sure he's still going to church, being fed, but he was having that intimate relationship, those intimate conversations where he tucked himself right under God's wings, tucked under his arms, rocked where God would rock him, comfort him, and never, ever, ever left him. That was a little kid at 9 years old to have experienced something so traumatic that he too wanted to die. And he lived with that guilt. But God had another plan for him. See, death has no age. It has no race, no gender. Death is all across the board. It hits at any given time, place, person. But it's like, but he was so young. Charlie was 8. But like what God said, is through God's grace, what I have for you, I have to remove what's distracted, what would be a distraction. But see, God already know your life ahead of you. He's not Bishop Lyonel trailer, helping so many people. He's the one that encouraged Christina, who wrote that letter, who going through some things right now, to write to Share with Charlotte, share her story. He helped so many people, the compassion and love that he had, because God has already gone ahead of you to know your story. He's already know the people you need to touch, that you need to help, that you need to serve. He already know the woman or whatever the man that's waiting on you. He already know your story from beginning to the end. He already knows. And for you to be on the path that God want to place you on, that I'm going to take you through some things so that I can groom you and build you, that I can reshape you. And that 9-year-old boy leaning on God the way he was leaning on God, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And that's what we need our young kids, to be empowered with the Spirit. And back in those days in the 70s, it wasn't about taking you to therapy. It wasn't about taking you to get counseling. If your family didn't help you, if you didn't have God in your life, then what would you have had at that age in the 70s? But let me share something with you, because I want to do a little digging for you. Because this grabbed me. And I did a little research and want to share this with you. Then I want to move on to something more information that really tugs at my heart to share with you. I did one based on suicide. And this was dealing with these are kids who are preteen. Actually, well, pre-teenager. And these kids are literally between the age of 8 all the way to the age of 12. They're not teenagers, not your 13, your 14. This is just 8 through 12. Keep that in mind as I share this with you. And this was a study that was done, and it was actually published back in 2024. So we're just talking about last year. This is not no old information. This is very recent information that was done. And it just broke my heart because, and I looked at where Lyonel was, who could have been one of those kids, you know, back in that day. But he had God. And then it says, youth suicide is significant public health. It's a big concern. And I'm going to take you back to 2021, where the National Institute of Mental Health did a research. And this was on suicide on your preteen, of course, from your 8 to 12. It said a total of 2,241 preteens died by suicide. And this was from 2001 to 2022. Again, it was 2,241 preteens, youth that died. 68% of those, well, let me take it back. 31.9% of those were females. 31.9. But look at the male. 68.1 were males who died of suicide from 2001 to 2022. And it says it took a downward spiral until 2007. And then it kicked back up again 2008. And that means every year 8.2% percentage keep going up. And it's been going up every year, 8.2% every year of more kids, not less kids, more kids committing suicide between the age of 8 and 12. And then it says suicide is the 11th, it was the 11th leading cause of death in female preteens from 2001 to 2007. It was the 11th leading cause of death. But in the boys, it was the 5th leading cause of death. And for the males, it's remained that way even to 2020 to 2022. But also with the girls, it picked up as well. And it's also now the same thing with girls, the fifth leading cause of death, even with girls. And it just means that the suicide rate of kids not knowing how to cope, not knowing how to process trauma, not getting the necessary help, not knowing God, not knowing who he is, that you can lean on something greater than man, greater than your circumstances, greater than your situation, greater than, just greater than what you can't even perceive without him. Greater than. That suicide is up 8.2% every year. The males are committing more suicide even than the females. But it's just a sad thing, and these are kids, 8 to 12 years of age. You gotta think about that. But what I love about Lyonel's story, what if he didn't know? What if that trailer family, my family, didn't pour God into him? Where would he be? And I guarantee you, he wouldn't be where he is today. But the foundation is so important. And I'm speaking to you parents, I'm speaking to you grandparents, I'm thinking to you people that have taken kids in. We want to just somehow give kids a lot of time a choice as to whether or not you go to church or you don't go to church, and they're living in your house and you're giving them choices. You don't give them a choice whether or not they know God or have a relationship with him. You're bound by duty, you're bound by responsibility, you're bound by obligation. But we're losing our children. And I was just thinking about this too, as I was thinking about this young age, and even how we went to church. I mean, as much as as long as I can remember. We're so quick to pick up a child's book, a children's book, bestseller, whatever, and it doesn't even speak about God. And we're reading this book that, remember Dr. Seuss back in the day, and but won't you be just as engaged, or just as eager, or just as enthusiastic of picking up a book and tell Jesus' story? Because Jesus had a powerful story. You don't have to pick up a fictional book or somebody with a character that made up, or a cartoon. You can pick up a book and teach these kids about who God is. Pour God into these children so that they can cope with life, because this world is ugly out here. There's a lot of stuff that these kids are going through that their innocence are taken at such an early age. And they're lost, and they're growing up with all this pain they can't shed. And even with Lyonel, even with him having the foundation, even the years of guilt he went through, even the years of reliving what happened. And he even said, even as I wrote this, it brought me to tears. And he's 58 years old, and the trauma of it all still brings him to tears, but he took the time. And he took what was in him and he poured it on his paper so that you could hear his story and maybe learn from it. He gave of himself, even though it brought him to tears, to do it, because he felt his story was worthy of sharing with you. Because a lot of us are still carrying pain. We're still carrying things we hadn't yet dealt with. And even if he cried, but he's in a place where God was healing it, but you had to relive it in order to write it. But he did that sacrificially because he thought it was important. So thank you for that. So what are you out there that maybe you need to write to? Because it is a form of healing to put your story out there, because it's no longer just your story, but you also make it someone else's story. You make something that was traumatic to you to give it something good for somebody else who can benefit from that, who can hopefully have it where it's good feeding for them. It can be inspiring, encouraging to them. And then it made me understand too when he said that he was basically afraid to love, to give his heart, because he gave everything to Charlie and it was ripped from him. It was taken from him. So love to him meant pain. And some of you out there are still in that same position where you feel love means pain. But I'm here to tell you it doesn't. Love does not have to mean pain. But I can tell you this, and that is, even if you had love for a while and God take it, that's a blessing within that time period that he gave it to you to know what that love was like and what it felt like. Just as one live, one must die. But he gave you that moment that a lot of people never experienced. He had a closeness, a bond with Charlie. They had a love that was inseparable. They had a love that was undeniably just one that of just as if they were just born as Siamese twins, joined by the hip. There was a love deeper than some people never get a chance to experience. But he had that. And sometimes you just got to be grateful for the time that God give you to have something special that you can have in your life that you can remember. But love, yes, can be taken from you. But it's the joy in which you had it that you have to literally lean in on, that you have to embrace as a gift. It's the time you had. That's your gift. That is your gift. And then as I was listening and looking at his letter and just thinking, you know, the years and the years in which it took. And what he say 33 years later, he's asking God again. You know, he wants to understand. Even though it happened at 9, but this is going forward, all those years going forward. That means it was unsettled. That means it still was unfinished business because he still wanted to understand, why not me? Why you didn't take me or take me with him? But then you get to God's grace. God's grace that he gave you because he has a divine plan for you and he got business for you to do. He got a plan for you. He got a purpose in your life. So God showed you grace over your life. And I have to add this, that he found and God sent him a true wife that he loves, and I do mean loves dearly. And she receives that love and she gives that love back to him. So he was able to open his heart to take that risk, to take that leap and go all in. And God sent him who he needed for his life to be moving forward so that he continued to do his work. He met someone who truly loves the Lord. And that's a blessing. So for those that are afraid, thinking love is pain, and that's all you see is pain, I want you to take that bandage off. Let that sore or that wound breathe. Let it breathe so that it can heal. Because I'm telling you, love is beautiful. It can be. But yes, man mess it up. And I don't mean man in gender. I just mean people can mess it up. That's why you have to wait for God to send you who he wants for you. You let God do that. Don't jump too quickly because you're anxious. But I love the fact that he said, too, that if it wasn't for God, when no one else knew what to do, when no one else knew what to do, and he said, but God. But God. He had who he needed. Sometimes you don't know what to do to help your child. You don't know what to do to make them feel better. Sometimes it's just your presence. But you got to pray over your children. Pray over their circumstance and their situation. You got to get it to God when you don't know how to fix something. You got to get it to God when you don't know how to make something better. But you got to also listen to your children of the pain they may feel. Don't dismiss them. Don't be so quickly thinking they should just get over something. Because every child does not deal with trauma the same. That's why suicide is a problem. That's why it's 8.2% every year. It goes up in our children, our pre-teenager children, 8 to 12 year old. There's a reason that it goes up. Because kids don't know how to process They don't know how to handle trauma. And they believe in heart, everything in their being, that dying must be better than this. That tomorrow is not going to be any better. It's going to be the same. And I can't deal with tomorrow because I can't even deal with today. And to me, Lyonel, thank you for this letter, because there's so much in it. But it's when your world shifts. The day that my world shifted, that was the day in Lyonel's day, is that day that Charlie died. And to be a witness to it. Like I said, I didn't only just see it, I heard it. And I knew everything in me, he was dead. But I got on that bus and went to school anyway. That took a lot for him to do that. But he knew that. So I don't know who's out there. I don't know who's going to benefit from this story or this, and everything that was shared. But you're in pain. Or if you got a child who have not yet dealt with what he needs to deal with or she needs to deal with, pay attention. Because suicide is real. And if you're out there and you got these little children, these babies or these young kids, fictional books isn't the only book you can grab. Nothing about Jesus is fictional. Nothing about God is fictional. Pour more of him into your children at an early age. Trust me, if they can understand Dr. Seuss, they sure can understand a biblical story. And they can also know and relate to who Jesus is. But we are bound by duty and responsibility and obligation that we do better by our children. We're bound. We got to do better. But thank you, Lyonel, for sharing this. I thank you for tuning in for this particular episode and being a part of this story, which is a beautiful, heartfelt story that truly I'm just thankful that he knew who God was. And God is. Who got him through this traumatic, which could have been his end, but he chose not. So thank you. If you have not yet subscribed or followed me, please do so and be a part of my podcast community. If you like this story, share, hit the like button, but also share it with someone that you think could benefit from this particular episode. And also you can see me and watch me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I just want to thank you again for all those who continue to love on me and take this journey with me as you have been. And also if you have a letter that you want to share in my season 3, from you to me, share me your story. Whatever that is, share me your story. Because again, your story is never just your story. Your story is also to be shared. Because it can be a blessing to someone else. So thank you, and thank you again, Lyonel, for sharing this with not only me, but also with my listeners. So thank you. I look forward to the next episode, and God bless each and every one of you. And please, let's do better by our children. Thank you.